Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I just finished 175 miles solo through hike of the Tahoe Rim Trail, and I want to share with you some first impressions, things that really surprised me that I loved. I also sourced a few questions from the subscribers here, so I'll get to those questions about the trail as well. So stay tuned, and I'll give you a bit of a first impressions on how the trail was. All right, so coming at you from the backyard this time. Let me get this all squared away here. Tahoe Rim Trail, finished it up on Saturday, last Saturday. Today's Thursday, so it's been a few days. Had to take a whole day to drive back home. But hey, some initial quick thoughts. I've got some notes down here. I will start by saying the trail's great. Beautiful, very different. I felt like I kind of had three trails in one. There was the typical very pine foresty, very manicured trail section that I felt like was kind of along the east, a little bit of the north side and a little bit of the south, primarily on that east side. There was more what I felt like was the Sierra section, if you will, for a day or two in the desolation wilderness with the high granite peaks, the alpine lakes. And then along the southern end, it felt almost like here where I'm from, there was a bit more sage, there were some aspen trees, and just kind of a beauty in its own way. So felt like the trail kind of had three different approaches to it or versions of it, which was really neat. A couple other things, trail conditions. Loved the trail conditions, and in some places, man, it was just beautifully manicured and packed dirt. In most of that was in areas where the mountain bikers were able to be on the trail at the same time. So that was really nice for sections just to enjoy. Not the whole thing was like that, and there were certainly some mountain biking sections that were very rocky. But for the most part, if mountain bikes were allowed on the trail, it was a really nice trail. Another piece, I was a little disappointed with the wildlife, to be honest. I saw one deer, and that's pretty much it. Plenty of birds, plenty of squirrels, plenty of chipmunks, and a marmot here or there, and one deer. That was a little bit of a disappointment, but it certainly didn't break the trip for me or make it not worth going on or doing. Even with the smooth trail, talked about a little earlier, it's not an easy trail. So probably surprised a little bit that the trail was a little harder than I expected it to be. I kind of thought I would essentially be able to kind of cakewalk it, and to a degree I did, but it took a lot more effort than I thought it would, and it kind of hurt me a bit more than I thought it would, and you'll see that as I start to post the daily episodes. But man, my feet got kind of tore up. Bad idea for me to change shoes as I did earlier, during my training. It just didn't work out well for whatever reason. So, but yeah, the trail, there's a lot of elevation gain to that. More so than what my plan had initially said, more so than what I kind of anticipated. But just again, initial gut impression, great trail. If you're in the through hiking space or you want to give it a shot, you're an avid backpacker. Yeah, I definitely recommend the Tahoe Rim Trail. So I would say the top three things that I kind of learned or took away from this trail. One, water is a challenge. That east side was a lot more challenging than I kind of thought it was going to be. And in particular, a lot of that was because of the water. Either because there wasn't any and it just made it for long water carries, and because you're carrying a lot of water. That's, 4 liters was a lot of what I carried for the first 2 days. And that's even with a cache. So depending on how you split it up, depending on where you start, where your camp spots are, just know water's going to be a challenge. And that was a little bit more surprising to me than maybe I'd anticipated from the get-go. I really enjoyed a solo aspect of the hike in terms of just being able to kind of do my thing during the day. And so throughout the trail, the daytime and the hiking and the miles, I really enjoyed being alone. Where it challenged me at times was at camp, and likely because of my pace and everything else, I could get to camp relatively early in the afternoon, kind of early evening. And once you kind of get your chores all done, camp set up, cleaned off, eat, whatever, then I'm just kind of sitting around for a couple of hours. And in a few places, there wasn't anybody else with me. I was camping alone. And that kind of wore on me a little bit and maybe influenced, a little bit of a spoiler, how the trip ended, but I'll let you catch up on that. So that was a little bit surprising to me. One, that it was as easy as it was during the daytime, and maybe a little bit more challenging in the evenings, kind of being alone. So a couple of things there that were a little bit of a standout to me. Again, the conditions of the trail were great for the most part. I think over the first 4 or 5 days, there was only like 7 trees I stepped over from a blowdown perspective. There's a little bit more as you get into the desolation wilderness and a little bit more remote, and that's probably to be expected. But man, it was just, those were some good days, and those are some kind of key takeaways for me. Okay, so let's get into some Q&A on the trail real quick. First question comes from @backpackinggrub, and probably one that we should assume would be asked by him. What was your favorite freeze-dried meal? So on this trip, I did not do any freeze-dried meals. I cold soaked for my dinners for the most part. Had a couple of Trail Magic dinners, and then towards the latter few days, I had gotten some beef, just some tortillas and beef and stuff like that. So no freeze-dried meals on this trip. That being said, my favorite freeze-dried meals are from Peak Refuel. One, I think the taste is great, and two, they are by far the most caloric freeze-dried meals, which is something that is important to me. Okay, Ryan Mallory 3432. Ryan asked a couple of questions here. Longest section between water sources. For me, in the direction that I went counterclockwise, starting from Kingsbury South, longest stretch was probably close to a 20-miler there. So leaving Kingsbury South, 4 or 5 miles in, there's something called the Edgewood Creek. And that was the last water source on trail until Marlette Campground, which is roughly, let me see if I can figure this out, 28 miles or so, give or take a little bit. So longest stretch going my direction, about 28 miles from Edgewood Creek to the Marlette Campground. How are the mosquitoes? I pretty much had mosquitoes every single night, except once getting into the desolation wilderness. So when I stayed, essentially getting right into the desolation wilderness in Middle Velma Lake, through the different lakes into Lake Aloha, no mosquitoes, out Echo Lake area, down around the southern end, really nothing. When I camped at Round Lake, I think I had 1 or 2 little mosquitoes that I noticed, but everywhere else they were pretty bad and pretty swarmy from day one all the way, pretty much every night except for that night at Lake Aloha and at Round Lake. So this time of year, I guess when I was there, the mosquitoes were out in force. Cell service. So question, cell service, again from Ryan. Could someone get away without having a satellite communication device and still stay in touch with family and coordinate resupply with them? Yes, for the most part, that answer would be yes. I would never go without a satellite communicator, just from an SOS standpoint, even with a cell phone. That's maybe I'm a little conservative and safety's a little bit more my thing, but so I would never do that. That being said, everywhere except the desolation wilderness, I had reception at most places where I was at camping at nighttime, and I didn't really check through the day, but most likely through the day there was cell service. So thanks, Ryan, for those questions. Next one here, JF Adventures asks, what was your most memorable experience of the journey? Lake Aloha is just stunningly beautiful, and that whole section was beautiful. So kind of from a memory standpoint, that will always stick out. And then I just think, memorable experience, I think really just this being my first solo through hike, I think is going to be memorable in and of itself. I had some reservations, as I mentioned in the previous video, about my ability to mentally kind of be prepared for that. And I was just, you know, things went pretty much as planned. That's something I won't forget is doing that trail solo and just really enjoying that aspect of being solo through the day and hiking. Ryan asks one more question. Where did you cache water, and is there anywhere you'd recommend caching water? So we'll finish with that. I cached water at Spooner Summit. I brought some extra water for hikers and left a note in Far Out, and then I went up and cached my water closer to where I was going to camp. That's about the place where camping restrictions start. So in a pinch, you can go down the road, the highway, maybe half a mile to a mile where Spooner Lake is, and you can get water from there. I think there's bathrooms and other things down there. So in a pinch, if you really needed to, you're just going to go downhill off the trail for a bit to get water and come back up. You know, Spooner's is a good place to cache water. It's not absolutely necessary just because you've got the lake that's down the trail a bit. The other place that would be probably pretty crucial is Brockway Summit, or where you cross where the trail crosses the Brockway kind of highway. And fortunately, there was water there when I went through. I'd read the comments. Somebody had dropped 10 gallons off a few days ago, and just kept watching those comments. And again, my direction, counterclockwise, there's a reliable stream that's just off of Relay Peak. And between there and Watson Lake, there's no water on the trail. That's about 18 or 19 miles in total. So you're either going to stock up a ton of water at this creek and take it all the way to Watson Lake. I guess either direction, if you're at Watson Lake going clockwise, unless there's water at Brockway. So Brockway was about 10 to 12 miles from that stream, and then it was another 6.5 or so into Watson. So thank goodness there was water at Brockway. But I think some trail angels dropped water off at Brockway, and then but if you were just to be sure and wanted to make sure, I would say stash or cache water at Brockway. Write your name on it, tape the stuff together. Hikers are generally pretty respectful if you've got a name on it and a date of when you're going to be there. So Spooner and Brockway, with my itinerary, that's what I would do. But if your itinerary is slightly different, then there may be another place or two that makes sense. So that's it for the questions. I appreciate Jay, Ryan, and Backpacking Grub for the questions. Hopefully that answers most of those, but if you got others, let me know. All right, so let's start wrapping up here. So would I recommend the trail? Yes, absolutely. Who do I think the trail's for? Anybody that's into backpacking or hiking. I mean, Thru hikers are going to have a great experience doing this trail, because you can still get out, 165, 170, I think is really closer, 170, 175 mileage wise. But I think even just your everyday kind of weekend warrior backpackers, don't shy away from this trail either. I would just make sure as you do your planning, make sure you understand where the camping restrictions are, and make sure you understand where available water sources are for your time of the year. And just follow along to make sure you know when some of the areas shut down. So when they shut down the pipe, the water spigot at Marlette Campground or Mount Rose campgrounds, so that you're just aware of kind of what's going on water-wise. So what's next? I will start working on daily videos from the trip and get those out. Hopefully next week I'll start with day 1 of the Tahoe Rim Trail. So be ready for those to kind of come out each week for the next 7 or 8 weeks. And then there's probably a few gear things. There's probably a few tips and tricks. There's probably a planning video. Similar to a lot of the John Muir Trail videos I did, I'll probably do something similar for the TRT. I had planned to do the Uinta Highline Trail again here in about a week or so, and there's probably a good chance that's not going to happen based on things that happened to me on this trail, mainly my feet and a little bit of my gut. I think I got some bad water. Not much of a spoiler, or a bit of a spoiler, but so that Uinta Highline Trail may push potentially a few weeks, a month. It may just push till next year. So if that's interesting to you, if the TRT is something you're planning on doing, or you're just interested in some of these videos, hey, please subscribe below. Hit that like button if you would. Comment if you got questions. But that TRT series will be coming out here soon. And I'm really looking forward to getting that footage out and starting to put it together and make some videos of it. It's just a really neat place. So a couple questions. If you've done the TRT, what stood out to you most? What was the piece or points that really kind of was a highlight for you? Drop those down below in the comments. I'd love to hear. I know a few of you who I saw on the trail, and I think another fan I missed just a day or two, finished it before I got out there. What stood out to you on the trail? Love to hear it. And if you're planning or you'd like to plan on doing the TRT, what are you kind of nervous about? What are some things that you're unsure of? Comment below and I'll reply to those, and those may end up turning into a video here in the future. Appreciate you all for being here. Again, I just am so grateful for anybody that's viewing these videos. I know it's my amateur baby YouTube channel here, but if you're enjoying what you're hearing, give me a like. If you're excited about this TRT series, consider subscribing so you can follow along and you won't miss these days that are upcoming. So appreciate y'all, and we will catch you in the next one, which will be TRT Tahoe Rim Trail Day 1. Peace.